A Maryland mother dealing with unimaginable grief after an accident takes the life of her son.
But it's how he was treated in those last few hours by those called to help that she can't forget.
Tonight, she shares Ilan's story with Tisha Thompson and the News 4 team, hoping to keep it from happening to anyone else.
He was a redhead, like his hair, bright and jolly and social and just totally lovable.
Rebecca Razzulli lights up when she talks about her son, Ilan, the outgoing religious college student who she says loved making other people happy.
Now I'm all for a good laugh.
But 1 year ago, Ilan was on school break from Cornell, visiting childhood friends in College Park, when one misstep changed everything.
We never expected this to happen. We are perfectly ordinary people living an ordinary life. And we sent our son off to have it fun with his friends. And when he needed help, the people supposed to help him didn't help him.
Ilan and some of his friends were challenging each other to short foot races on this sidewalk outside a University of Maryland residence hall.
Do you remember him hitting the ground?
Yeah.
His best friend Tani saw it happen.
I don't know, he clipped his heels or he tripped on the sidewalk.
Ilan hit the back of his head while trying to run backwards. Friends immediately called 911.
They just, were moving very, very slowly.
Do you think they thought you guys were drunk?
Absolutely.
A copy of the EMT report obtained by the News 4 team noted all bystanders on scene were considerably intoxicated, as well as the patient. But Tani says Ilan had only had one drink that night.
He wasn't drinking.
Not really.
Tani says the emergency crew did not put a neck brace on his friend and at first tried to make him walk to the ambulance.
They tried to pick him up, and his legs were all like jelly, and he was complaining that he couldn't feel the bottom half of his body. Instead of standing flat on his feet, he was kind of like this, standing on like almost the top side of his feet.
The EMTs eventually used a stretcher. According to county records, they did not use lights and sirens to transport Ilan, meaning they did not consider his injuries to be life-threatening. But it was the moment after they arrived at the emergency room that Tani says still haunts him.
I'll never forget this, absolutely never in my life.
What one of the EMTs said after his friend yelled out in pain.
The guy, the one who was driving, he slaps him on the thigh and says, "Could you shut up? There are people who are really sick here."
That's not acceptable.
Absolutely not acceptable. And frankly, if the retraining and the retesting doesn't show an improvement, then those folks would not be back to service.
Prince George's County Fire Chief Mark Bashir investigated the case after getting a letter from Ilan's mom. He tells the I-Team while the crew did transport in a timely manner, both county employees had their licenses suspended until they received extra training.
In this particular case, folks probably weren't as professional as they needed to be.
And Chief Bashir says that training will be passed on to all employees in his department.
And this case is giving us a moment of pause to be able to go back and make sure that all of our providers are provided with a little bit extra information about recognition of potential head injury and the types of things that they might think were intoxication.
By the time we got there, Ilan was no longer talking.
Blood tests showed Ilan was not intoxicated. He died a few days later from his head injury.
It can't be that when you call people to come help you, first responders, that they decide whether you're worthy of help. That's not fair.
And while his mother says she knows nothing might have saved her son that night from the traumatic brain injury, she can't help but wonder why compassion was missing from his critical care.
You think about all the times that you take such good care of your children. And here he had an injury that would kill him, and nobody cared.
Rebecca and Tani say that lack of compassion continued into the emergency room. Coming up at 6, we bring you that part of the story when we sit down with the president of the hospital about what went right and what went wrong and the changes happening today because of Ilan's story.
All right. Thank you, Tisha.
Tonight, a local hospital has changed the way it looks at patient care because of the story you're about to see.
A young man's life cut short due to an accident. Nobody is sure he could have survived, but as Tisha Thompson and the News 4 team reveal now, it's how he was treated in the last moments of his life that has his mother calling for change.
There were no lights or sirens when Ilan Razzulli arrived at the emergency room in October 2014.
He ran backwards and that he fell and hit his head.
And no compassion, according to his mother.
I hope that by talking about this intensely personal moment, that we can make a change.
EMT records obtained by the News 4i team say Ilan was intoxicated. We now know that was not true.
Everybody's complaining about the drunk kid. And I tell them time and again, he's not drunk. He puked not because he was drunk, but because he smacked his head against pavement.
One of Ilan's best friends, Tawny Levitt, rode with him in the ambulance and says from the beginning he felt like both the rescue crew and those in the emergency department at Washington Adventist Hospital brushed off his friend as just another drunk student.
There was one nurse in particular who was just incredibly obnoxious, telling him, wow, this kid can't hold this liquor.
Medical records show 2 separate blood tests that night proved Ilan was not intoxicated. But Tawny says he grew frustrated at how staff continued to treat his friend.
He's asking, pleading with these people, please give him a blanket, he's cold. They said, no, we're not going to give you a blanket, you're covered in puke.
They didn't clean him up, and they didn't give him a blanket, and he was shivering. And when they wanted him to get into a gown, they made him take off his own shirt because he was some old drunk kid who didn't deserve any better.
Ilan's mother, Rebecca, tells the I-Team she is haunted by how her son was treated in those last few hours of his life, especially at a time when she could not be by his side.
Things were done well from a medical standpoint. I think we could have been more compassionate, and that is really important to us.
Dr. Linda Nordman heads the emergency department at Washington Adventist and says the moment Ilan arrived, staff responded quickly to his head injury. But she admits her employees should have had more compassion.
It's our responsibility to those patients to console them, to support them, to care about them in their last moments. That's why we're there. That's our job.
Dr. Nordman and hospital president Eric Wangsness met with Ilan's family after he died.
Do you feel like real change has been made because of Ilan?
I hope so. I believe so.
Wangsness tells the I-Team Ilan's story has made a tremendous difference. The hospital ordered all emergency department staff to be retrained to improve patient communication and suspended one ER employee because of comments made to Ilan that night.
This was a mirror held up to us that we didn't like. There were comments made that aren't supportive of who we are.
Wangsness says 1 year later, he's now sharing Ilan's story and this video with all new employees and hospital leadership to remind them that caring for patients does not always involve medicine.
Will I get the care that I need if I come to this hospital, no matter what the extenuating circumstances are that got me here?
Absolutely.
Ilan's mother has decided against filing any lawsuit. She hopes instead her son's story will improve care for all future patients who end up here.
We can make it so that even one person gets treated better by an EMS or a hospital in their hour of need. Even one, that would be enough.
Ilan's mother was out of town when the accident occurred. By the time she had arrived, Ilan had already slipped into a coma from a traumatic brain injury. He died the next week. Jessica Thompson, News 4i team.